Hey everybody, I'm Mob. Welcome to Mob Hammer 40K, and I have a wonderful guest with me today, Matt.
How's it going?
Also online today, I have our co-host and director, Sean, who's tuning in online digitally, watching us.
Hello.
In my previous videos, I talked about building community and meeting new people, and Matt was somebody who I met fairly recently in the last couple of months. As I was getting into Imperial Knights, I found out that he had this amazing 2,000 point Chaos Knight army that he has custom made and brought to showcase today, and it's absolutely incredible.
The goal was to make everything tournament legal. I'm not a tournament player in the slightest. I don't pretend to know the rules that well or anything like that. I'm much more on the hobby side. But everything is GW plastic or resin with the exception of just one of the bases here. But then everything else, yeah. Should I redo that?
Like you've actually added some like blood and gore on top.
My inspiration there was one of the Child's Play. They open up Chucky and he's got guts inside instead of
it
batteries.
was Bride of Chucky.
Right, that was an idea sort of that went through kind of the whole army. These ideas of these like demons made of flesh but just crammed inside of machines as tight as they could be and sort of bursting out.
So much of this shows so much of your personality and your interest.
Sure, yeah.
You got the Anthrax shirt on, you got like the tattoos. Everything that you put out here is stuff that showcases your interest, your personality, and I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts and process with that.
When I decided I wanted to do Chaos Knights and was thinking about color schemes, I really didn't want to do anything that referred to any other established Legion or Chaos God. Couldn't do red, couldn't do blue, couldn't do green, couldn't do purples and pinks. I was like, I don't want to do orange and black. That's just Halloween colors. And the more I would say that to myself, I'd get more and more excited about the idea of painting a Halloween army. And then I just sort of decided to lean into it. Orange is super hard to paint. Orange paints traditionally don't have great coverage. So I went with a contrast paint, Magma Droth Flame, to start off all the orange base. Just because it was easy to get a pretty even layer or just get coverage on it. And then it's just a flat Vallejo Fire Orange. Super thin layers. Definitely learned over time how to glaze those layers on more and more and not get too many thick globs. It took a long time to build this army.
Yeah.
A long time to build, a long time to paint. So over the course of many months, and this being like the first big 2,000 point army I tackled at once, there's a huge discrepancy between the models I finished last and the models I finished first, just in terms of painting skill and cohesion, I guess, of what the scheme was supposed to be or what the themes of the models were.
I think this is a good example of our own worst critics. So I look at this and like you say, oh, there's some things that take longer, or like there's discrepancies, but like I think there's just so much cohesion here that does not at all like to me feel like it's out of place. Like they all look unique. That kind of like plays into the strength that there are little differences maybe in the techniques you're using.
It's definitely like a secret of chaos hobbyists everywhere, I think, is that your mistakes are never mistakes. When I'm making armies, I'm always thinking about the lore behind them, just some sort of fluff to motivate what I'm creating, what the paint scheme is, things like that. And so thinking of these as maybe just a bunch of garbage thrown together by some dark mechanicus wizard just trying to come up with something new.
What did you get this from? Like the headpiece? Like is that
that's
a vampire bat? Like what is that?
That's from the Terrorgeist kit from Age of Sigmar.
There's another model here where it looks like, I don't know, my friend called it a death mower. Like this looks like it was something from the Plague Marines, like something.
It is. It's from the Fetid Bloat drone. If you go through the whole army, you end up seeing not just one bit from one kit on one guy, but you'll see like Fetid Bloat drone body is here. The rotors are up here. Maybe a combination of 10 or 11 different kits that have been, cut up and pressed around. The base for that is 3D printed. That little resin connection point to where the cannon is sitting there is not super happy, but it's worth it, I think, for that effect of him flying on the fire.
That effect is so cool. Yeah. For the people who are like looking to get into it or interested in the hobby, how would you pitch it to them? We
as Warhammer people are a little hyper fixated on getting people into Warhammer specifically, and it's easier in some way in the fact that Warhammer is pretty cool. It's got good lore, things like that. But I've started to ask around with friends, like, can I print you a model and see if you like painting it? Just trying to find these like low barriers of entry that are not 2,000 point lists, because I've made that mistake multiple times trying to jump too hard into a list and you end up getting burnt out. You figure out you don't like it halfway through. Painting Genestealer's cults is the worst process I've ever done. So find something like that you like about it and attach to that, I think is a really good way to look at it. Or, really look into those small scale skirmish games. Or really, I think everybody says it, but Kill Team and Warcry are just genius things for getting people into the hobby. Once you realize that it's and I think this army helped me do it, that it's really yours. Like, it's especially kit bashing this whole thing. Once you realize it's really yours and it's not for anybody else, my hobby Instagram is for me to share, not for me to receive likes from other people, whatever. It becomes a really satisfying process and something really you could stand back and be proud of something small that takes an afternoon to do, but then you have it forever kind of thing. It's fun.
What would you recommend for somebody that is intimidated to learn the rules and get started in the whole process?
I'd say to sort of immerse yourself in those rules without any sort of stakes to them. Don't look up those rules when you're gonna go play your first game and try to learn the rules. I do a lot of listening to battle reports while painting and not really paying attention to them, but just hearing names of rules and phases and people pulling stratagems out here and there. Or I'll listen to channels like Auspex Tactics as podcasts where I'm sort of zoning out when he's just going over math. Not my favorite thing in the world sometimes, but
It's relaxing.
but it can be relaxing. He's got a soothing voice, and if you get a little bit of information out of it, it can enrich your hobby. And I think just like Reddit, in the same way that we have sort of benefited from each other playing together, painting together, I feel like when you're going to maybe a YouTube channel or a painting tutorial or things like that, you're sort of assuming the other person is the expert and you have to match them. When you go onto a message board or something like that, you're sort of asking for a collective advice sort of thing, workshopping rules or painting schemes and things like that. And all the rules and the painting rules and everything are so ambiguous anyway that to me it's more fun when we sort of collectively decide how we're going to have fun with it rather than playing it as if we are lawyers. People who are afraid of not knowing enough rule-wise beforehand, get a friend, get some rando on the internet, play on Tabletop Simulator, super, zero barrier to entry on that. Throw some virtual dice around, see if you like the rules of the game. Maybe you don't, and you just like painting, and that's totally okay too. I'm going to end on a bittersweet note with this army, I think, a little bit. I think Mob mentioned it before, that I said that I would never do this again. And I mean that sort of out of love. It's a completely unique army, so obviously I can never do it again. But I think the amount of almost literal blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into this have produced something great, but have really taught me that I don't need to do things on this scale anymore. That once I went back and painted that first cultist after doing these giant monsters, I sort of unlocked the fun of the hobby again in a weird way after this became sort of my job. So that's my advice I would leave off of. Manage yourself and don't hobby if it's not fun. Once you stop having fun, stop painting. Do something else for a little bit and go back.
On that note, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Mobhammer 40K. I'm hoping that we'll have a chance to do some more little interviews and some army showcases again in the future. We'll see what you think. Stay tuned. Smash that like button. Apparently, I haven't said that enough in the other videos. I've been told that I have to ask people to subscribe,
That's what you gotta do.
all that stuff.
It's the way.
It's the standard thing. Matt, thank you again so much for coming.
Thank you.
Sean, thank you so much for tuning in online and helping direct us with this. Again, we couldn't do it without you. And I'll see you both on the tabletop.
Yeah, thanks for having me.